Twitter, is that your first go-to, or do you check email to see what the campaigns are telling you?
Often
or
it's
do you
sort
have
of,
some like brand new social media site I've never heard of?
No, that would be cool though, wouldn't it? Often it is.
Hey Dave, ready to talk 2020?
I am. Let me ignore Twitter for a minute.
I don't think you ever leave Twitter. Okay, so we're going to the White House. Do you ever actually hang out at the White House?
No, I mean, theoretically, if one of these people wins, then I'll have to go there. But I haven't been there in years.
This is it.
Everyone who is on the trail right now running for president, everyone who dropped out, I spent at least a little bit of time with them. And I spent enough where that I'm not out every single week where they're going. I choose kind of judiciously. I say, okay, well, it's been a while since I checked in with this group of voters or this state, so let me follow this candidate to that place. And it can be anybody.
You're looking at the calendars of all these different campaigns. How do you decide, like, okay, this week I'm going to hit Dallas, I'm going to somehow make it to Cleveland, and in between maybe I'll dart up to Michigan?
Well, my brain has rewired, so when you said Dallas to Cleveland, I'm like, oh, well, American flight, they have 3 a day. And you start to learn how to get around on public transport. The coverage, the time spent with people is more with voters than with the candidates. And sometimes with the speeches, like we really have heard the entire speech before. Maybe there's one new word, you're listening for the one new thing. Hey, did he say that? Is that true? But 95% of the speech might be exactly what they meant to say, right on message, not new at all.
Who's doing the best job right now? Just getting the audience psyched up, getting people signed up, creating buzz, generating enthusiasm?
I'd say Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Pete Buttigieg are at the moment doing the best at that in different positions. I mean, Bernie Sanders has a fan base that he's kept largely, not kept all of it from last time, and a couple new people. It's similar to his base at this point 4 years ago. Warren has not done this before, but kind of knows what she's doing. And his campaign's very good at chasing people, making sure they show up to stuff, making them excited about becoming a volunteer or caucus goer. I mean, they kind of have the most active volunteers in Iowa. And the Buttigieg campaign is more organically building. It has more sizable crowds than you might expect. If you just look at their polls, it's kept fundraising pretty fast. And at the events itself, people leave pretty impressed. And so I left Biden out of that, not to slight him, but he's somebody people know very well. He's not getting a gigantic crowd that must hear him and see him. And on the way out, if you look at the door and see who's signing up on cards, a little bit less. People are interested, but they're shopping around.
Let's talk about Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
What are the ways that you judge if it's a good night for her or not?
If you see how many people are signing up as the event ends, I ask a lot of people who they voted for last time, and there were two options. Both of them are usually good for her. If they voted for Hillary or if they voted for Sanders. I meet fewer people who didn't vote at all, but those are the ones where I think it's connecting more. And if it is an event somewhere in the South or in Los Angeles, a city that's more diverse, you do look to see if there is anyone who's not a white person at these events. You do that for her, for Bernie Sanders, for anybody but Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. You kind of...
Because they have a more diverse crowd.
If there is a big Warren crowd in South Carolina, but it's not very black, then even if there's 1,000 people, that's a worrying sign for her. Not that she's going to fall apart, but that she has not yet connected with people that she could win the nomination with if she connected.
What do people chant at her rallies?
They chant 2 cents.
2 cents! 2 cents!
And I think that might have started with some sort of campaign staff yelling it. I don't know. It definitely has become an organic thing. People get excited when they hear her talking about 2 cents on every dollar that you make over $50 million. Now, honestly, I think that's been compelling because Bernie Sanders has more ambitious plans for taxing the wealthy, but they take a minute to describe.
She's known for the selfies at the end of the rally. And you said other campaigns are even ripping that off at this point?
Yeah, they have different ways of doing it. So
talk about what her technique is and what's so effective about
Warren's technique is have the event, announce at the beginning that they're going to do selfies afterwards. She's even started to call them the real measure of democracy. So she will promise the crowd that if you stick around, you're going to get a picture with her. She's had giant events where she stuck around for hours, and there's kind of an Iron Man storyline that comes out of that. Other campaigns...
Which is significant because she's a 70-year-old candidate.
Yeah. And voters don't think she's that old. There's a couple things you wonder if they would click if she actually became the nominee. People don't look at her and say she seems old. They do think that about Biden. Biden has always worked the rope line, so he doesn't have a formal line at most events. People just come up to where he's been speaking, crowd in and wait and talk to him and get their photos with him, and he's very giving when it comes to that. Bernie Sanders never liked doing that stuff. I mean, he's always disliked the elements of politics he thinks are celebrity-based, and he's kind of had to get used to it this time. He has done more than other campaigns with collecting the individual stories of people.
And some of them have gone viral.
And some have gone viral to explain how the healthcare system just doesn't work for them.
I've been underinsured for over a decade, and because of that, my husband and I have been riddled with that. My parents have been riddled with that.
And it's actually a thing that I don't think Biden could do, because it would raise questions about, you were there for 8 years, why didn't you do something?
What do you listen for at Biden rallies? What's he doing?
At the rallies, I'm kind of curious about how much he talks about his plans, because actually that's something there's two things you hear a lot that don't necessarily make news every day. You often hear voters complain, oh, they didn't talk enough about veterans, they didn't talk enough about climate, when they have policies on this stuff. And you'll hear them complain if they don't think they got a good sense of their plans. So I always listen for how Biden is doing that in a way that's not like a laundry list.
We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. And so, folks, if you're interested, join me. I could use the help.
And I listen for the crowd's energy as much as anything, because there are some people who show up to the event as superfans are going to walk over cold. There are some people who show up because they think he's the most electable candidate. And the story has been over the last 2 months, he's gotten a little bit less popular with Democrats. He's not collapsed. But there has been this attrition of people showing up or hearing about him and saying, I like him, but maybe not this time.
And Dave, when you say that, I mean, you're hearing that from voters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people here in D.C. will say that, sort of like we've heard or polls show us, but you're saying that with the authority of talking to people.
Yeah, I don't really trust my own opinion unless it's based on talking to some voters. The first people to kind of ring alarm about Biden were Iowa county chairs, who, if you interviewed them, said, we're excited by this field, but Biden's been around a while, we're not sure.
What's Pete Buttigieg trying to do to engage with crowds?
Well, Buttigieg is engaging crowds and the press more than anybody else, I think. Warren's doing more photographs than anybody else is. I think Pete Buttigieg is doing more media engagement, and you might say that's where the votes. Well, what he's trying to do, not always subtly, is Buttigieg is trying to get the audience to imagine what it would be like for this 38-year-old, I think he maybe turned 38 during the election, to debate the president, to be somebody the party could invest all of its hopes in, who could win a news cycle from time to time.
So what are you listening to in terms of audience's receptiveness to his message?
Yeah, so Buttigieg doesn't have a chant that gets going, but you hear people kind of remarking on kind of like a well-delivered line, as if they're watching an Aaron Sorkin script or something.
Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Do you know why?
It's the only thing that ever has.
I'm not exactly a Navy SEAL, but I know what to do when the alarm goes off for incoming, and I've faced much worse incoming than a tweet full of typos.
And you see people kind of go, oh, and you've heard this line a million times, but you kind of look in the crowd for the faces of people saying, oh, good one. Like
Pamela Harris was overheard by a reporter saying, I'm effing moving to Iowa.
Yeah.
And now they're like using that as a...
They're kind of using that. She has tried for a while to make a thing out of an offhand remark, she said, where she just was listing a bunch of stuff wrong with Trump and said, dude gotta go.
The bottom line is this, dude gotta go.
And they've tried to turn that into a merchandise and a meme. I don't think it's really clicked yet. Her issue has been more that just on the stump, people leave not quite sure what she stands for. They're really excited by the idea of her. There's like no nice way to say it, no way to do it without being a theater critic, but she just takes a long time to explain things. She and Biden are the candidates so far I've seen where people kind of give them a standing ovation on the way in and not all of them give them a standing ovation on the way out. Just they were really excited to see her, and at the end of it, they're not quite sure what she said.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because you've been talking about the candidates and voters. You've been talking about voters listening for how can this person perform against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right? You've talked a little bit about how would they serve as president, but more it sounds like what you're hearing from people is them asking how are they going to serve in the general election.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and part of that is as simple as Democrats saying literally any one of these people will be better than Trump. Like, they really believe that.
They want to know who's going to win.
They're confident that any Democrat, if they got back in, would start undoing some of what Trump did pretty quickly. And the argument has really moved further away from what this person would be like as president than in a lot of things I've covered.
You've been here on this bench with me for a while without checking your phone. Are you going through withdrawal symptoms? Or are you doing okay?
I feel like there would have been a town crier situation if something really crazy happened. Somebody yelled, "Oh my God," and dropped their phone, it would have shattered. So if that didn't happen, we're probably fine.
Do you want to check it now?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, are you?
Yeah. Nothing crazy had happened now. A couple press releases. Somebody asked me where the heck I am, which is normal.
Like an editor or like someone in Iowa?
Yeah.
An editor?
Yeah.